This podcast is not meant to be professional advice of any kind. It is meant to be informative and entertaining. If you make any changes to your life, see the appropriate professional before you do so. Hello and welcome to Super Age. My name is David Harry Stewart. I'm the founder of Ageist. At Super Age, we help you live better and become the best version of yourself. And who doesn't want a Super Age? Welcome everyone to episode 102 of the Super Age podcast. This will be dropping on September the 21st, 2022. Today's show is brought to you by Inside Tracker, the dashboard to your inner health. Go to insidetracker.com/Ageist, save 20% on all their products. Today's show is also brought to you by Element, LMNT, my favorite electrolyte mix. It's what I put in my water in the morning, and it's what I put in my water at the gym. Go to drinkelement.com/Ageist. Check out the specials that we've arranged for the listeners of this podcast. Welcome, everyone. I'm back in Park City, Utah. Last week, I was down south in Nashville and Chattanooga and parts in between, taking care of some family business. And Nashville is kind of great. I mean, I've been hearing people the last few years moving there, and I think I was last there some time ago, but it's really wonderful. It's really almost, this might be a bit of a stretch, but it's sort of a European good living oriented city. And I found that really remarkable. Just upside surprises all around in Nashville. So if you get a chance, check that out. I think it's good to, get out and do new things out in the world. It's good for our brains. It's good to expand our emotional and intellectual capacities. And one of the good ways to do that is to travel, is to go other places. I find whenever I go somewhere, and especially when I return from somewhere, I'm filled with this sort of new place energy that I just get like fired up about, what I'm doing, seeing new things in a new way. But I also have some thoughts about nomadism. I think there's a lot of that during the COVID pandemic. It was, let's get an RV, let's travel around, or we'll sell all our stuff and we'll go to Bali and then we'll go to Bangkok. And, my thoughts on that are nomadism is for a very specific kind of person. And in general, it's highly overrated. It's really good to have a home. And, as I said in the newsletter last week, even nomads aren't really keen on packing up the yurt every few months. It's nice to have a base. It's nice to have a place to live. It's nice to have friends and family and routine and gym and, all those things you get from not being a nomad. So that's one of the things that I learned from the pandemic. And incidentally, when we were down south meeting people, we went to visit the parents of a friend of mine. And I hadn't actually met them before. And they were awesome. They were, mid-Chinese, Taiwan immigrants, came here a long, long time ago for a better life. And they've done very well. And they took really good care of their kids. And it was just great to hang out with these older people. They're not that much older than me. They're like mid-70s. I'm 63. But they live a fairly quiet, retired life. And they were really fun and really funny. And I think this sort of goes along with, reaching out to the sort of people that maybe you don't hang out with all the time. And people who are older and potentially much older than us, I find super interesting. They're quite different in the way they view life and how they view their futures. And I think that's really fascinating. So plug for that. And I think that goes the other way. I think that they found us really interesting. And I think that us coming into their world and presenting this sort of novelty to them was also really useful to them. And I think that's one of the reasons that I really also enjoy working with people that are much younger than me, because they just think much differently and they bring a sense of novelty to my life. So yeah, check that out. Get outside of the comfort zone, go somewhere new, meet some new people. Today on the show, we're going to talk about rapamycin, which is a compound. I guess it's not quite a drug. It's a naturally occurring compound that there's a lot of noise out there in the world that seems to be sort of building around this. I've been aware of it for a few years. I know a number of people that take it off label. And I'm going to say this right from the get-go. This is not medical advice. What we're going to do today is informational only. Don't make any changes to your health routine. Do not be taking any kind of, just don't be taking things without talking to your physician about it. Because, rapamycin is not approved for the purposes that a lot of people are taking it for. So, disclaimer there. So to better help us understand rapamycin and mTor, what is mTor and what is autophagy? We've got Ross Pelton on the show, who just released a book on rapamycin, mTor, and autophagy, and why we should know what these things are and what they do. So we're going to get with Ross and discuss his book and the effects of rapamycin in just a moment, after a quick word from our sponsor. Today's show is brought to you by Inside Tracker. Inside Tracker is the dashboard to your inner health. Just as a car has a dashboard so you can tell how fast you're going and how much gas you have, you need a dashboard for your inner health. You need to know what's going on inside your body if you're going to optimize it. You need some way to monitor what's going on inside your body. And then once you know what's going on inside your body, you need some way to help optimize that. And this is what I get from Inside Tracker. With their 43 biomarkers that they're testing, along with the genetics that they test me for, I know what I should be eating to really optimize where I want to be. And I get to choose that target of where I want to be. Am I working on brain health? Am I working on longevity? Is there something with my fitness that I'm interested in optimizing? The app will make recommendations personalized to me based on my blood work and my genetics. And that's something that I just think is invaluable. It's not a replacement for seeing my doctor. It's not a replacement for any of the other professionals in my life. It is an additive, but it is an additive that is with me every day, all day. And I can consult it and I can see what should I be doing right now. And then I can test again and see what changes have happened. If you go to insidetracker.com/ageist, you'll save 20% on all their products. Today's show is also brought to you by Element, the electrolyte mix that I've been using to stay hydrated and to keep my electrolytes in balance. I started placing Element electrolyte mix into my water after my workouts on the recommendation of a friend of mine who's a 50-time Ironman competitor. I told him that I was having a lot of trouble recovering from my workouts, and I thought it was my age. And it turned out it was my electrolytes. And once I started putting Element into my water, I noticed an incredible difference in my ability to recover from my workouts. It went from, truthfully, an hour or two to 10 minutes. Because the problem was my electrolytes were off. Now what I do is I put Element in my water when I get up first thing in the morning. I also have it in my water that I drink during the day. And then, of course, at the gym, I make sure that there's Element in my water. And, of course, in my beloved sauna, the same thing, Element in the water. So it turns out that some of that brain fog and just muscle ache and sluggishness that I was feeling was not age-related. It was actually electrolyte-related. We talk a lot about hydration on this podcast, but the electrolyte mix within that water is really critical. Right now, Element is offering listeners of this podcast a free sample pack with any purchase. That's 8 single-serving packets free with any Element order. It's a great way to try out all 8 flavors and share Element with a salty friend. Get yours at drinkelement.com/ageist. This deal is only available through this link. You must go to drinklmnt.com/ageist. We'll be leaving that link in the show notes too. After you check it out, let me know what you think about it. Did it make the change for you that it did for me? Hey, Ross, how are you today?
I'm fine, and it's really a pleasure to be on with you today. Thanks very much for the invitation.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to talk about rapamycin today. So you've written a book called Rapamycin, mTor, and Autophagy. Why did you do that?
There are thousands and thousands of scientific papers that have been written on the other topics in the title of my book, mTor and autophagy, but nobody'd written a book to explain all of this to the general public. Rapamycin mTOR autophagy and treating mTOR syndrome. And I realize that these are topics and terms that are not in the vocabulary for most people, but I hope in the near future they will become common terms for everyone because they're central to the aging process. And at the outset, I want to just emphasize that rapamycin is the most effective anti-aging drug that's ever been discovered. So that's a pretty important story. But another story that I've discussed in my book, which I think is even more important, is this understanding of mTOR and autophagy, which has led to a totally new understanding, a previously unknown understanding of a primary mechanism that regulates the metabolism in every cell in your body, in fact, in every living organism on the planet. And many people alive today are out of balance with this mTOR autophagy ratio, and that is causing significant health problems. And so in addition to rapamycin being important, the emergence of the story of mTOR and autophagy and how it regulates health and metabolism in the aging process is, I think, a very important story.
Okay, so let's we have to unpack some of this. What is autophagy?
Autophagy, a Japanese scientist won the Nobel Prize a number of years ago for his discovery of autophagy. Autophagy is a phase inside cells when nutrients are not available to the cell. Autophagy is activated, and our bodies and individual cells seem to be able to target damaged or underfunctioning cellular components and misfolded proteins and so forth, target them for destruction. They break them down to their component parts and either utilize the component parts to rebuild healthy new proteins and enzymes or to get the damaged substances out of the cell. It's a major part of detoxification. So that's autophagy. Detoxification, or the actual rebuilding, revitalization, renewal of cells as it breaks down, for example, proteins into its component amino acids and uses them to rebuild healthy, new functioning proteins and enzymes and so forth.
So these malfunctioning cells, some people call them zombie cells, they can do some bad things.
They do some bad things. They are a major source of inflammation. And of course, inflammation is tied into all the diseases of aging. And so when you have these zombie cells proliferating and not being removed from the body, you have higher rates of inflammation and you have accelerated aging. So this is one of the major things that rapamycin does in helping to rebalance this mTOR autophagy ratio. And so now we should probably step over to the other side of the coin and talk about...
Before we get to mTOR,
yeah, you bet.
I want to stay with autophagy for a moment.
You bet.
So by reducing the amount of nutrients to the body seems to go in and harvest these sort of semi-functioning bad cells and sort of eats them in a way. Now, my understanding is that this is one of the benefits of intermittent fasting, that's it's thought anyway that that's one of the good things about doing it. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And I want to differentiate between lack of nutrients and malnutrition. For hundreds of thousands of years, people did not get up in the morning and go to the refrigerator and take out food and start making breakfast. People didn't eat 3 meals a day. For hundreds of thousands of years, people were oftentimes hungry. Food was difficult to source. And scientists and historical anthropologists and so forth estimate that our ancestral humans probably only ate once a day and spent about 4 hours per day digesting their food. These days, people start eating at 7 in the morning and go breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and mid-meal snacks and dessert after supper, and maybe an evening cocktail. So from 7 in the morning until 7 at night is 12 hours, another 4 hours to finish digesting food, that's 16 hours, whereas ancestral humans only had 4 hours per day of eating and digesting. So we're eating and digesting food 4 times longer every day compared to ancestral humans for hundreds of thousands of years.
I would like just to point out that ancestral humans had a life expectancy of 29.
That's true.
So a lot of the things they did didn't work out so well for them.
That's true.
So,
Yeah, you bet.
and I think this sort of goes to the idea that somehow imitating the eating habits or other habits of ancient humans is somehow good for us. And I personally have seen no scientific evidence about this. I know that there is calorie restriction, for instance, seems to work very well in very small creatures, worms and yeast and things like that, and it works less and less well as you sort of go up the evolutionary ladder, so to speak. And so I'm very cautious about these ideas of some kind of diet or eating protocol based on what somebody did 100,000 years ago, because, as I said, they lived to 29, and I have higher ambitions than that. So mTOR. I want to make this as simple as possible, because once we start using these sort of these acronyms, we can get in the weeds really quick. But so simple as possible. What's mTOR?
mTOR is a protein inside cells, and this term for this protein, mTOR, was created by David Sabatini, who discovered the mechanism of rapamycin. When rapamycin goes into a cell, crosses the cellular membrane, goes into the cell, it binds with this particular protein. So they named the protein mTOR, which stands for the mechanistic target of rapamycin. So when when rapamycin binds to mTOR, it partially inhibits it. Well, so what is mTOR? Well, mTOR is a master signaling regulatory mechanism inside cells. When nutrients are available in the cell, mTOR sends out signals to the cell that says, use these nutrients to build new proteins, build new enzymes, build new cellular components. So mTOR is build, grow, proliferate.
That's good, right?
Yeah, that's good. Except if you do it all the time, then autophagy doesn't get time to function.
Right.
And so that's where the balance comes in. And yes, stimulating mTOR is good, but I use some analogies. For example, a race car. Those Formula One race cars are incredible machines, but they can't drive for very long. You can't drive those things 100,000 miles. They only go fast for one day and they're shot. And just like running, yes, it's good to be able to run, but you can't run continually. You have to stop and rest. And it's the same thing with our cellular metabolism. You can't be in the go, go, go position all the time, or you will burn yourself out, and you won't get the process of autophagy, which is detoxification, recycling, revitalization, and renewal.
Let's go to the. I know there's a really good story about the discovery of rapamycin, and the accidents that were involved in that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this.
Sure. It's very interesting how this all came about. In the 1960s, a group of Canadian scientists organized a scientific expedition to Easter Island. Why Easter Island? Well, it turns out that on Easter Island, horses ran wild. And for centuries, there were more horses than human inhabitants on Easter Island. And where horses are prevalent, there is usually tetanus bacteria in the environment. These scientists realized that the Easter Islanders went barefoot all the time, lots of horses, so there's tetanus there, but they never got tetanus. So they wondered if there was something there that was preventing them from picking up this disease that they were being exposed to all the time. So they organized this expedition to go to Easter Island and took a lot of soil samples from all around the island, took them back to the labs in Canada. And lo and behold, one of the soil samples contained a compound that is naturally produced by a strain of soil bacteria. So this is actually what we call a postbiotic metabolite. It's a compound that's made by a strain of bacteria, natural in nature. And I point that out because a lot of the drugs are compounds that pharmaceutical companies make that nature's never seen before and our bodies have never seen before. But rapamycin is naturally produced in nature. And on Easter Island, the indigenous people's name for Easter Island is Rapa Nui. So they named this new drug that was discovered rapamycin. So that's how the drug was discovered. And there's another long history of how it was left unresearched for a long time and so forth. And I don't think we need to go into that. But when they started studying it, they discovered that rapamycin exhibits some very strong antifungal properties. And the purpose of the scientific expedition to Easter Island was to look for potential sources for new antibiotic or antifungal drugs. So started studying rapamycin, powerful antifungal properties. But shortly into the research, they discovered that in addition to its antifungal properties, it also suppressed the immune system. So all of that research was just dropped because immune system suppression is not something they wanted to have accompanying a new drug for antifungal purposes. But in 1999, the FDA approved rapamycin as a drug to give to patients receiving a kidney transplant because people getting an organ transplant need to be on immune suppressing drugs for the rest of their life to prevent the new organ from being rejected. And so rapamycin got approved as a drug to cause immune system suppression for specifically people receiving organ transplants. When samples of rapamycin were sent to the National Cancer Institute, they did some initial tests and went crazy over it because they discovered that rapamycin is a totally new type of chemotherapy agent. Most chemotherapy drugs are what we call cytotoxic. They kill. In addition to killing rapidly dividing cancer cells, they kill rapidly dividing cells in the human gastrointestinal tract and rapidly dividing cells in the bone marrow. And so you get lots of side effects. Rapamycin is not cytotoxic, it's cytostatic. It stops the cancer growth, but it doesn't do it by killing. So the National Cancer Institute elevated to priority status in terms of research, and subsequently rapamycin has been approved to treat several different types of solid tumor cancers. This brings up the topic of the difficulty of getting rapamycin as a life extension drug accepted by doctors and the general public. Most physicians aren't familiar with rapamycin. Those that are familiar with it primarily know about it as a drug to suppress the immune system or a chemotherapy agent. Those aren't conditions or situations that you usually use when you're going to prescribe a drug for life extension enthusiasts that want to increase their lifespan and their health span. So it's an educational process. We have to educate people that, I should actually do a little segue here. How did we learn that rapamycin has health benefits rather than just suppressing the immune system or as a chemotherapy agent? The difference is when you take it for immune suppression or chemotherapy, you take it every single day. A scientific study was conducted and they discovered that taking rapamycin once per week rather than daily resulted in about a 20% increase in the functionality of the immune system in elderly adults. So that was a breakthrough study conducted by a physician by the name of Joan Manick that actually started to publicize the fact that if you take rapamycin episodically, either once a week or once every 10 days or 2 weeks, you'll partially inhibit mTor and allow autophagy time to function, but you're not taking rapamycin every single day to the point where you get immune system suppression.
Okay. So it seems what I'm understanding here is by taking rapamycin intermittently, you cause the body to behave in a way that sort of simulates intermittent fasting.
Exactly.
Did I get that right?
Yep, you bet.
Okay, great. Because I like to eat.
And everybody does, David. And so intermittent fasting and time restricted eating isn't saying reduce your calorie intake. It's just saying take all of your calories in a shorter period of time, so there's longer time each day without nutrients coming in, so autophagy gets time to function. So it's important to understand that things like calorie restriction is not nutrient restriction. You want to be optimally nourished with all of our essential nutrients, but take your food in a smaller window of time so that there's more time without nutrients and autophagy gets to function. So that's the benefit of intermittent fasting and time restricted eating. These are the natural ways to stimulate and activate autophagy, and it's doing what rapamycin does. Rapamycin is a calorie restriction mimetic. It actually is telling the body that there are no nutrients available so that autophagy can function.
I'm just going to take issue again with this. As you said, calorie restriction is not intermittent fasting, but they often go together if you reduce the eating window. And I think it's intermittent fasting, one has to think about what one's objectives are. An athlete will not intermittent fast because they need amino acids in their bodies circulating most of the time so that they can build muscle. And I think one could make a pretty good argument that having muscle and avoiding sarcopenia and osteoporosis is also a pretty good thing for longevity. The other thing is this idea that autophagy begins at certain point in time, and that seems very unclear to me. That if you reduce your time window to 4 hours or 8 hours or 12 hours or whatever it is, my understanding is your body needs to go into something called ketosis for real autophagy to happen, and that's not going to kick in. For a few days. So I'm not sure. This is me being a skeptic. I will say that the majority of people that I know in the health and longevity space do tend to restrict their eating often in a circadian way, meaning that they eat probably more in the morning than in the afternoon, and then they stop eating in the night. I know some people, my buddy Rudy Tanzi over at Mass General is head of neurology there. He only eats one meal a day. But he does this not just for longevity, but for weight management. So I also think there's something there about the finding the optimal weight, and that may be actually more impactful than the autophagy. But these are things that we're still figuring out. It's a complicated thing. What I find is I need about 3,000 calories a day, a little more than that, and to get enough. I weigh about 170 pounds, so to eat 170 grams of protein in a day, it's a project. So it's like a lot of eating.
It was a transition for me. I work out in the gym almost every day. If I'm not in the gym, I'm riding my bike or going on a hike or something. But I now never eat until 12 or 1 o'clock. And I won't say I'm fanatical about this. I can go on a weekend with friends and party and have fun. But most of the time, my lifestyle now, I'm doing this intermittent fasting. And realize there's a lot of bodybuilders think they need to consume high levels of protein. Autophagy, you're breaking down old cells and reusing the amino acids. So you're not starving when autophagy is functioning.
Talk to me about, I know there's some trials out there, human trials, and especially there's something called the Dog Aging Project.
You bet. Matt Kaberlein is a scientist who studies the aging process, and he's up at the University of Washington. He's initiated the dog aging study. He recognized how important it is to understand the aging process, and dogs age about 7 times faster than humans. So he's organized a trial. They hope to get over 100,000 companion dogs. These are household pets. And they want to get them enrolled in the study. There's 2 different arms of the study. In one arm of the study, they're just cataloging data from all the pet owners. How often do you walk your dog? How often do you feed your dog? Once a day, or is the food available for the pet to eat all the time? They're going to catalog all of this information and see what kind of trends they find for the aging process. And then a second arm of the study is the rapamycin trial, where a number of these dogs will be given rapamycin. A number of other ones are the placebo controls, and they will document the effects of rapamycin. And dogs, like most mammals, get most of the same age-related diseases as humans. So they get cardiovascular disease and liver disease and cancers and so forth. And so if we can document the benefits of rapamycin in dogs to delay the onset of age-related diseases, that'll be an important part of this puzzle in understanding the aging process. And we think it will translate into human.
And, us humans, we live a very long time. So it's it's not nearly, it's totally impossible to do an aging study on us for so many reasons. But with the dog, because they, as you said, they age 7 times faster than us, when would we expect to see data coming out of the dog aging project on this?
Yes, you bet. I don't know how long it'll take them to process all that information, but I would hope maybe 7 to 10 years we'll start to get some pretty solid data. And another important thing to emphasize about the dog aging project, these companion dogs, these dogs live in the same environment as the owner.
Right.
And so that takes out one of the big variables that are often difficult and confounding different types of projects and studies that are going.
Yeah, the environmental part, which is, of course, with humans, impossible to control. So talk to me a little bit then about, you mentioned taking rapamycin once a week, I think is what you said. What are the protocols? Who's establishing these protocols? Safety, what's going on there?
I mentioned Joan Manick and the Manick trial with elderly humans. The way that trial was conducted, she selected elderly humans 65 years and older.
How many people in the study?
Pardon?
How many people were in that study?
I don't have that in my brain. I don't remember. But she divided.
We talking 5, 100, or?
No, it was. I'm going to guess around 100. It's in my book, and I just don't have that number in my brain. But she divided these people into 4 different groups, and so the groups took either half, and the drug used is called RAD001, which is a rapalog. It's a drug that's very similar. It's a version of rapamycin, has virtually the same properties of rapamycin. So one group got 0.5 milligrams daily. Another group got 5 milligrams once a week. Another group got 20 milligrams once a week. The 4th group was a placebo control. They took the medications for a number of weeks, 6 weeks. And then everybody stopped ingesting medications. There was a 2-week washout period. And then all these elderly adults received the seasonal flu vaccine. And then she measured how their immune system responded to that vaccine challenge. The people taking 5 milligrams once a week, that was the sweet spot. Those people had about a 20% increase in the function of their immune system. Now, every person 65 years and older has a substantial reduction in the effectiveness of their immune system compared to people 20 and 30 years old. That's part of the aging process. So if you're 65 and older and you get a 20% boost in your immune system, that's pretty significant. So that's how they arrived at this 5 milligrams once a week. Rapamycin is available in 2 milligram tablets. So most people take 3 tablets once a week, which is 6 milligrams. But I want to emphasize, this is really a new frontier. We don't know what's the best dosage for individuals. And I would estimate that probably the optimum dose for individuals vary from individual to individual because there's biochemical individuality. We're all different. And so we need to do the studies to check blood levels and see not only what's the best dosage, but what's the best frequency. Should it be once a week, once every 10 days? We don't know this yet. But there are, I would estimate, tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of people taking rapamycin now. And many of them are going on to an online forum called rapamycin.news, which is cataloging all the results in an ongoing discussion forum. And they just did a survey that reported, I think, around 80% of people taking rapamycin are planning to continue to take it. And so there's lots of data being collected on rapamycin.news. But I want to emphasize, we don't know the answer to many of these questions. But the human clinical trial by Joan Manick documented that 5 milligrams once per week seemed to be the sweet spot, which allowed partial inhibition of mTOR and activation.
But wait. What you said was there was a 20% increase in immune function. You
Yes.
didn't say anything about it decreasing mTOR or autophagy. How are those being measured?
When they receive the flu vaccine, they can do blood tests to measure the function of the immune system in the response to the challenge of the flu vaccine.
Exactly. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So they were able to measure that. They got once a week on rapamycin or Rapalog, 20% boost in the ability of their immune system to respond to the challenge of the flu vaccine.
But you said it also affects mTOR and autophagy. How are they measuring that? Like how do they know that?
No, they're not measuring mTOR and autophagy. Okay. I said that I misspoke. But the effect of rapamycin is to go into the cell and partially inhibit mTOR and allow autophagy to function. We don't have mechanisms yet to measure autophagy and mTOR. And inside cells, there are hundreds of mTORs. And so rapamycin goes in and binds to some of these. So you get partial inhibition. You might have 500 mTORs inside your cells. I might have 750. We don't know this yet. So it's such a new area. But we're understanding that this mTOR autophagy relationship is a fundamental underlying principle of metabolism in all living cells. And what's interesting to me is in prehistoric fossils, they've discovered in single cell organisms 3.5 billion years ago, when life began to emerge on Earth, mTOR and autophagy were in these single celled organisms. So these are called genetic traits that are conserved. They are so incredibly important. They have existed for long periods of time. And this goes back to the origins of life, where mTOR and autophagy were regulating cellular metabolism.
So I want to ask you, you said that the test was done on a Rapalog, something that's molecularly very similar. But what's the name of the drug that's given people for the, for immune suppressant? What's that? Is it called?
Okay, it's a good point to bring up. The name of the drug that was discovered is rapamycin. The pharmaceutical company Pfizer patented that drug under the brand name Rapamycin. So Rapamycin is the brand name. Rapamycin is the name of the drug that was discovered. And the generic name for the drug is sirolimus, Sirolimus. And so when people get a prescription for rapamycin, they're really getting a prescription for generic Rapamycin, which is sirolimus.
Sirolimus. And so now I know some people are pretty public about their taking of this. I guess Peter Attia probably has the biggest profile on that. So he was, I think, taking 6 milligrams a week, 6 weeks on. I think it was something like that. Maybe it was 2 months on, 1 month off, 2 months on, 1 month off, and now he's just taking it all the time. And he's, been pretty public about I have no idea if this is correct. I seem to be okay.
Me too. I'm in the same boat. I admit we don't have all these answers, but I think there's enough information in animal studies. In animal studies, virtually every single type of age-related disease improves when the animals take rapamycin. Metabolic diseases, neurological diseases, all types of cancer and so forth. Everything improves when you activate autophagy. And so there's the supposition that this is going to be true for humans. The Joan Manick trial showed that it helped boost the immune system.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's a couple of human trials that are starting to be funded and trying to get started. But when you understand the underlying science with mTOR and autophagy, you realize that if you are overexpressing mTOR and not expressing autophagy, you're going to have underfunctioning in every single cell in your body. You're going to have buildup of toxins. You're going to have old cellular components that are underfunctioning. And when you start taking rapamycin episodically, every single cell in your body is going to start working better. Some people say, oh, that sounds like a magic bullet. Well, yes. Fundamentally, all cells and all age-related diseases are going to respond to this. And so that's why Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease and all these neurological diseases have been evaluated in animal models. Metabolic syndrome, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, all of these diseases in animals substantially improve. And in fact, with cardiovascular diseases, it's actually shown a reversal of the aging process in animal studies. So this is really, I think, a very exciting new era of health, starting to understand, and this is actionable. There's something we can do to really improve our metabolism in every cell in our body. How we eat, how often we eat, this intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating, and the fact that rapamycin will accelerate or do that for you. That's what I'm excited about. I'm passionate about health, and this is a really important new topic.
So if someone wants to get rapamycin, which is now generically called sirolimus.
Sirolimus, yep.
And I go to my doctor and I say, okay, I want to live longer. I have this idea that this is going to help me live longer. And he's going to be like, but you haven't had a kidney transplant. Why do you want this? There may be some resistance there. And I can't just go to the CVS and say, give me some sirolimus. How do I, what's the I mean, how are people getting this?
Great question. Thank you very much. It's an educational process. My book is designed to provide all the information that accelerates people's learning curve about rapamycin. Many people are buying my book and taking it to their doctor and saying, please read this. So you have to educate your physician. Here's a good example. There's a Dr. Stephen Holtze in the Houston, Texas area who has a Holtze Health and Wellness Clinic. One of his physicians came to him and said, Doc, you have to read this book. Dr. Holtze read it. He ordered 600 copies of my book. He's sending it out to 600 physicians that utilize his compounding pharmacy. But if you can't get your physician to listen to you and realize that this is a health-related substance and you want to take it on your own recognizance, there are some physicians that are doing telemedicine visits. So people, and I'll have this in my second edition of my book, which hopefully will be up in 2 or 3 months, names and phone numbers of several doctors who will do an online visit with you and charge a fee for the online telemedicine visit and write you a prescription for a 3-month supply of rapamycin.
Okay, so hold on. This brings me to my next question, which clearly my health insurance is not going to pay for sirolimus, right? What is sirolimus like? If I wanted, what does a single 6 milligram dose of sirolimus cost?
When I
more or less,
when I took my prescription to my local drugstore, Ashland Drug, the pharmacist looked it up and said, "Yeah, it's available, but I'm not going to order it for you." A bottle of 100 2 milligram sirolimus tablets, generic, costs well over $3,000.
Whoa!
I get a prescription filled for a few tablets, they're going to have a lot of money tied up in their inventory that's not moving for them. He didn't want to order it. I took it to my local chain drugstore. They don't have tight inventory controls the way an independent retail pharmacy does. They ordered it for me. I get it on a monthly basis, and it's an FDA approved drug. I get it for $20 copay every month on my insurance.
Oh,
I get it covered on my insurance.
All right.
Yes. All right. So there is a third option. Some people don't have insurance. Some people can't get their doctor to write the prescription for it. There are a fair number of people, in fact, an increasing number of people who are ordering this from generic pharmaceutical companies in India. There are a number of Indian generic drug companies that are making it. This is being tracked on rapamycin.news, the online forum. People say that it takes anywhere from 6 to 8, 10 weeks to get it in the mail, but it's coming through the mail without being confiscated by the authorities, the postal authorities. So people are paying for it, and they're eventually getting it in the mail order. So there's a couple of different options here. But my thing that I really hope people will consider doing is educate your doctor. Right. Tell the doctor that my book is available. Get doctors to learn that this is really critical for health, and the aging process is not just for kidney transplants and chemotherapy.
Gotcha. Super exciting. I think there's, I mean, and I'm just going to I know I said a disclaimer at the beginning of this podcast. This is not medical advice. This is information. We're not telling you to take
I also
this.
am not a medical doctor. I'm not prescribing this for anybody. I can't. But I'm a health educator. I've written 12 books, and I have a passion for health and passing this on to anybody who's interested about it. Let me bring up another topic I find pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Who should you prescribe rapamycin for? Who should be taking it? You would never give it to a young child, because infancy and even teenage years, in the early 20s, you're going through a rapid growth phase. And mTor is the signal for growth. Take these nutrients and use it to build and grow. You don't want to inhibit growth during infancy or teenage years. So it's advised to not give rapamycin to younger people. This is my guess, maybe in mid to late 30s or so. I think it varies on people's health condition. So if you've got a 20-year-old that's grossly obese, maybe you'd want to, I don't know. We don't know the answers to these things yet, but I want to point out that you don't give it to young people. Let's see, where do I want to go with that? I lost my train of thought. So let me toss the mic back to you.
Well, people who are involved in times of growth, you want full mTor.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks. I just did remember my next thought. So if you inhibit mTor, you inhibit growth. So bodybuilders thought originally, maybe I shouldn't be taking rapamycin, because if I inhibit mTor, I'm not going to be able to build muscles. And so bodybuilders were initially reserved about using rapamycin. It has now been discovered that it will enhance bodybuilding, because during the phase of autophagy, you're breaking down misfolded proteins and building healthy new proteins. So you need that rest phase in order to have successful bodybuilding and successful any type of exercise. You can't exercise all the time. You have to have some rest phase. In fact, power lifters in strength building, when you go to your maximum limit, if you're lifting weights, you're actually doing damage to your body. You're doing micro tears in the proteins, in the structures of your body and the muscle fibers. And you have to have a rest period for those to repair and rebuild. And so that's kind of an analogy for why autophagy is so important.
And you're only taking this intermittently. You're taking this once a week. You're not taking it every day. Yeah. So, okay. Amazing. So that's a lot of great information. I appreciate you coming on today.
It's been a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate your interest and your willingness to let me chat about this today, and just encourage all of your viewers to get out there and buy a copy of my book. It's available on Amazon, and also you can go to lifeextension.com//RAPA, RAPA. Life Extension has very kindly supported the publication of my book. So I want to mention that.
Very good. All right. Thanks so much. I appreciate this. It's a complicated biochemical thing, and I think we've done a reasonably good job of simplifying it and letting people know how it works.
Thanks very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
Take care, Ross.
All right. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us on the show today. Ross Pelton's book, Rapamycin, mTor, autophagy, and mTor syndrome is available at Amazon. That link will be in the show notes below. And a big thanks to the sponsors who make this show possible. Go to insidetracker.com/ageist to save 20% on all their products. And my favorite electrolyte mix, Element. Go to drinkelement, LMNT.com/ageist, and you'll get a free sample pack whenever you make a purchase. And if you like the show today, you have the opportunity to give us up to a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this show. And you can also leave a comment. We love comments. And also, maybe share this show with somebody who you think could use it. Not everybody knows about rapamycin. We unpack it. So please share the show. That's the only way we grow, and we very much appreciate it. If you have any questions, you want to reach out, comments, david@superage.com. I answer all of my email promptly and directly. Everybody, have a great week, and we'll be with you next week with another great show. Take care.